Is Logos Bible software any good for daily devotions, or would it be too distracting? Well, that was my quest when I started to work with Logos Bible software a month ago and make it my exclusive tool for doing my devotions every morning. How did it work out? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. If you've been watching this channel for any time, you'll know that I've talked about on this channel devotions quite a bit over the years. I've explained different ways that I've done things. And if you're interested in that, I'll leave a link to one of the videos up here and maybe a couple more in the description below as well that sort of talk about devotions and that kind of thing and how I do those. But basically, my devotions revolve around 4 key questions. How am I feeling today? What has the Lord been doing that I can give thanks for? I normally find 3 things to give thanks for. What am I reading and any observations that come out of that reading? And finally, I pray. And that's where I just write down things to pray for and people normally to pray for. So that's what I do in my daily devotions. Now, if you've used Logos Bible software a little bit, you might have seen that there's actually a devotional workflow in Logos Bible software. And you might think, well, that's a great tool to use. Just jump in and use the devotional workflow that Logos includes for itself. And you know, that's a great idea. And there's a lot of good things about that devotional workflow. It's kind of useful in the sense that it actually does work pretty well, but it's not perfect, and I will show you why. So you can see here in Logos Bible software on the left-hand side, this is the devotional workflow. So to find the devotional workflow, all you do is come down here to the guides and type in Devo, and you'll find down here under workflows, you'll have devotional, and that should pop up for you there. Now you can see I've created my own, trying to sort of work around some of the what I think are limitations in this. But here's what happens when you use this. The first question we have here is around choosing a reading plan, as you can see. And this, you know, it just asks you, record your thoughts on choosing a reading plan. This is kind of a pointless question to ask every day, in my opinion, but nonetheless, it's helpful if you haven't reviewed your reading plan for a while. Begin your time with prayer, and I think it's helpful to write something simple down here. At the end of each of these, you can see from the bottom one here that it asks you to either skip or continue, and so I've gone through and just continued for each of these to show you what happens with these. When you go to the third one, so these third questions, this is where you type in the reading. This is the text you choose up the top here. That's the first thing you do, is choose the text. And then it's going to give you the reading here. And it's easy enough just to click on more, and you can jump into the text that you're reading from. In this case, it's the Greek New Testament. I've just chosen one verse, but normally you would choose a passage, a chapter or chapters, whatever you so are inclined to look into. And perhaps one other reference or issue with this is that it only really takes one reference at a time. So if you're using something like the Grant Horner reading plan, this isn't going to really work well for you, because that's going to give you 10 different readings in the different parts of the New Testament. So it's really great if you're just working through one passage at a time, not so helpful if you're working through multiple texts all at once. And again, these are kind of helpful. Make any observations and then any questions you might want to ask about this. It'd be better to actually answer those questions, I think, rather than focus on just asking them. And so rather than doing Bible study later, I would be inclined to sort of say, well, just ask the question and do a little bit of extra work now. Let's just reduce the size of that one down. Work on memorizing the passage. I don't normally do that within my devotions, although it's a very good thing to do, and I have done it in the past. Reflect on the passage. 1 or 2 practical ways you plan to apply this passage in your life. I think this is where you can put together something really practical you can take away and then put into your prayer together, which is what I've tried to do here. Now, the problem with all of this is that what it creates is it creates a note file for this particular devotion. And you can see here, this is my note file on the right-hand side here, and you can see that I tend to have a very small number of notebooks, and I tend to organize them, as you can see, current notes, pre-seminary notes. These are notes I made before I went to seminary. These are notes I made during my doctoral program, during my MDiv, and so on. So they tend to be very specifically oriented. And some of these are like beginning Greek or home group notes or membership notes, whatever it happens to be, theological ponderings. They're more specific to some particular type. But here's the thing. When you fill in this guide, you get a note file, like notebook, for every single day that you do a devotion, which means that in a year, you're going to end up with 365 notebooks, which in my mind is mind-blowingly poor use of notebooks. It would be far better, and that's what I've done here, to create a single notebook where you can store all your devotions and somehow why not put all of these things in the left-hand side here? Why can't all of these be concatenated down into a single note with prompts in the heading of each of them? That would make much more sense to me. Then you got one note per day, and you can put them all into the same notebook, namely something like devotional reading or whatever it happens to be, and that would be the way to go. So I find that this is cumbersome. Because of that, it makes a bit of a mess of your notebooks and makes it very difficult then to find notes that are not devotional notes. There's benefits to it, I'm sure, but for me and for the way I use notes, this doesn't really work very well. So I didn't want to use that. I tried building my own, which you can see when I come in here and go Devo. Again, you can see I created my own BMA devotional, or Daryl Burling's devotional workflow. So I did try that, but again, same issue cropped up. Every time you ask a question, it creates a new note, and every day creates a new notebook. And so that becomes quite untenable quite quickly. So let me show you how I do use this on a day-by-day basis. So going back in here, let me just close that down. I actually have a daily devotional layout. So you can see layouts here, and you can save it as a named layout, whatever you want. So I've got a devotional layout here, and you can see that this is what it looks like. You can see I've got on the one side here, I've got my my notes here, and I'm going to just sort of flick through here and find one that and here's one of the benefits of this actually, is that it makes it kind of easy to look for notes that that you've already written up earlier on. So here's a note I wrote a little while ago, Friday 19th of May. And so I was looking at going for a ride that day. You can see anyway. So here's the things I have. First of all, it asks me, it puts the date in. Today, something about today, how I'm feeling today. So I'm happy to be here and to read and pray. 3 things I'm thankful for, and then some notes from my reading. So, and then I'd go through, make a bunch of notes in here, and then at the end of all of that, I'll pray. And I've got a prayer list you can see on the left-hand side there as well that I will just work through and pray through. So that's kind of how I structure my devotional time. And so this is how I do this now. And so what you can see here is if I pull this out, it's all in one note file rather, called devotional reading. And in there, this makes it really easy to find everything as well, because by simply adding an anchor at the top here, that makes this very searchable. So for instance, I want to find everything with anchors in Romans. Well, there it is. Right now I'm filtering all my notes in that notebook by the book of Romans. And you can see here I've got this little yellow heart indicator to indicate that this is something that I did in my devotional time. So if I go to Romans chapter 1 here, you can't see it now, but if I turn on notes for this, notes and highlights, and I was to turn on just the notes for my devotional reading, you can sort of see that those will fit in there, and you can see it very easily to see what did I write on that day about this particular thing. And of course you can change the note color and icon, and this is what I might do every time I start this Bible reading plan. Again, change that reading color to another one so that I can differentiate between the different notes as I want to, or even just create a new notebook for a different Bible reading plan or whatever. So there's different ways of managing all that as well. But the nice thing here is that this allows me to very easily find notes related to whatever it is that I'm interested in at that time. And you can see I've also got tags here as well. So one of the things I really like, there's a number of things I really like about taking notes here. One, having these anchors makes it very easy to find notes based on texts and things that I've looked at in the past. Notes from my reading, I like that it's very easy to copy these as well. You can see over the right hand side here, I've got the copy Bible verses window open. To find that, all you do is just select some text, right click on it, and you can choose more here, and that will come over to the copy Bible verses. So if this isn't open, so to open that, what you do is you just right click on a passage, choose reference, and then under copy, choose more, and then you'll see it pop up over here. And you've got to choose from a bunch of different styles. I've chosen oration because it keeps the heading and version on the same line as the text itself at the beginning, so I know exactly where I'm referring to as I start that verse. And then you just copy by clicking the button here and then just paste it in down the bottom here. So copy down the, I'm just going to throw it in here, paste, and there it is. And it even puts a line in above it, which I kind of like as well. And then after that, I just say, some notes here, sort of thing. So that would be how I would go ahead and do that. And it doesn't matter what translation you're using, it'll just copy whatever it is you're looking at that particular moment. So I really like the ability to do that. I also loved the ability to sort of use additional resources I might happen to have. So if there's a verse that has a word in it that's kind of unusual, I might look at that word and I might go, okay, what is that word? I can look it up in BDAG. I can quickly and easily do a search for that word as well. Right click on it, selection, and I can choose search Bible. And you'll see it pops up here in the Greek New Testament, finds every occurrence of that word. Let's just go with passages. There's only one place with it. And we can even do things like, we can do a morph search of it. So for instance, if I wanted to find a word that I was interested in, maybe it doesn't occur very often, I can right click on it there, choose selection, and then I can do an inline search for it. If it comes up, great. If it doesn't, well, let me go back here. Selection, actually we can choose the word here, and then we can choose do a Bible search for that, and there it's going to go ahead and do a search for that word everywhere in the Greek New Testament, which is going to make it really easy for me to look at how this word is used in other verses. And I can even, and I have actually done this, and sometimes look at just Paul's writings or whatever it is by just narrowing down the search scope here, so it just shows me how Paul uses this particular word. So there are lots of little tools like that you can use, and I've used things like looking at prepositions. You can see here I've got Murray Harris's prepositions in the Greek New Testament open, and I could easily go in here and look at ice and look at the different meanings of it and see if it mentions this particular meaning or whatever it is. So this is one of the great things about using Logos Bible software for devotions generally, is it means that when you do have questions about how something is working, you can very easily go look it up. You've got the resources there, and that makes it nice and simple. And I don't find that this is terribly distracting. I think this is actually not too bad, but we will come back to distractions a bit later. Another thing that I found really helpful here is because I've started tracking certain topics and things, you can see here down the bottom, I've got a number of tags that I've added to this as well. So you can sort of see here that there's one of these, where is it here? I think I was talking about marriage at one point in here. And you can see I've tagged this with marriage, and then it's easy again just to go through and find anything related to that particular tag. I've got rid of that faith one. Let's go marriage. And you can see this is the only tag with marriage on it, but it's something that I will build up over time. So this is going to be very helpful as well. So again, it helps you to find those verses. You're thinking about something the other day and you tagged it, and you can find it very easily. The problem with this, the only thing I'd like to see with this, is that when you look at this, it's very hard to see where I'm talking about this. Like, for instance, here's this discussion around pistis, which I haven't tagged here, but let's do that now. Faith. So there we go. So I've tagged this with faith now. So this is kind of helpful for me to see that, but it would be really helpful within this to actually see, well, where did I mention this inside this note, right? So it would be kind of cool to be able to say faith here and have it highlight a little bit like what we've got here, so that it automatically will search for this tag in all my notes if I wanted to, and also allows me to really easily and quickly find the location of this topic within this note file, which, as you can see, gets a little bit long sometimes. So that would be one thing that I'd love to see in this as well. Another thing that's really helpful in this is it allows me to very quickly and easily, as I'm typing, typing a note referring to, Romans 1 verse 4, for instance, and it automatically tags that. I love that it does that for me automatically. And if I want to, I can do a little bit of a connection here, and you can type in, you can come down the bottom here and copy this location. You can see here I've copied it as a URL, but let's just go logos 4 location, aphorizo, and I can come in here and I can say the word aphorizo appears in verse 1. Look at that. I heard you say that was a mistake. Check here. So in this case, I can just put a link in up here. As you can see, click on the link button. This pops up, and then paste in that reference, and there we go. And now if I click check here, bang, it opens it to that reference in BDAG, which means that I can have one note and refer to everything that I looked at in my devotional reading as I look through this. So I don't just look at something and go, I wonder where I got that idea from. I can actually link to the document at that point where that was. So if I scroll away from that part of BDAG there, come back here, click check here, bang, back at aphorizo again in that reference. And on top of that too, one of the things about using a laptop rather than Logos on, say, my iPad, which I used to use Logos on the one side and then Obsidian on the left on my iPad. The problem with the iPad is that the formatting tools on an iPad are nowhere near as good as they are on a Mac or on a PC. So for instance, if I want to put in a bullet point, you know, I can type in star space and it's automatically going to turn that into a bullet point, point one, you know, etc. And that makes this very easy to work with, whereas on an iPad, that's a pain in the neck. And one of the reasons I didn't actually use this or try this on an iPad. But if this worked well on an iPad, it would probably be a much better tool there as well. Although I think this still has some better functionality on a full computer than it does on an iPad, just in terms of looking things up, linking to documents and things like that. Which brings me to the question of focus, because the one thing that really I've been concerned about moving to Logos for my devotions is the ability to maintain my focus and not be distracted by bells, whistles, dings, and all sorts of notifications going off on my laptop. Now, for the most part, I haven't actually had a problem with this on the computer, and the reason for that is twofold. One, my devotions are done normally quite early in the morning. People don't normally message me. That makes a big difference. And two, you can actually use focus modes like sleep mode or work mode or do not disturb mode, whatever you want to call it, and whichever one you want to set up, to actually filter out distractions and things that might actually get in the way, which means you can actually customize the environment so that you don't get those notifications on your Mac or on your PC. The other thing I really like on a Mac is that you can go full screen with the app, which gets rid of the dock and everything else. So you've got one app in front of you, and this is actually really good because even though with Logos and say Obsidian, where I'm taking notes in another app next to Logos, I've still got the two apps, whereas with Logos alone, it just gets rid of all of those other distractions, which I find a little bit cleaner and just a little bit easier as well. However, the big challenge I think with the focus on a laptop, and this goes to the same with any mobile device as well, an iPad would be the same, is that you've still got this question of, well, what about that resource? Does Logos have this resource available on their website? And so you go jump into a web browser, you go to logos.com and you look up that file or that book or whatever it happens to be. And then of course, you know, you end up shopping and you go, should I buy this now? And you're in a decision cycle you probably don't want to be in during your devotional time. So that's the big challenge, but that's not to do with the software. It's more to do with the fact that you're actually on an electronic device now, which then gives you the opportunity to go do those things. And so there needs to be some discipline employed, I think, to ensure that you don't go down that track when you're doing devotions. Now, there were some things I don't really like about Logos Bible software, or things that perhaps I would like to see improved. And obviously one of those is the workflows. I think having a workflow where it saves all of that information into a single file would make a whole lot more sense, rather than a single document or note file for every workflow instance you run. It would be much better to fix that, as we mentioned earlier on. But beyond that, there's a couple other little things. Well, one other little thing I think that would make this a big improvement, and that is that there's no spell check or grammar or anything like that, or even the ability to use something like Grammarly inside Logos Bible software right now. Now, on the one hand, you don't get distracted trying to fix your spelling and things like that, but on the other hand, yeah, if you want people to be able to read this later on, it does raise the question of, well, my spelling's going to be a mess and you're going to need an editor and all that kind of stuff. Well, that's fine. It's just one of those things. But it would be nice to be able to solve that at the time, at least as an option, even just to use something like Grammarly or something like that as a tool inside Logos Bible software. That'd be cool. Other than that though, I'm actually kind of sold, and I'm looking to move my devotional times into Logos Bible software on my laptop going forward. But I'm interested in your thoughts too. What do you think? What are you using for your devotions? Do you use physical paper like I've done for many, many years and keep going back to over and over as well? Do you use an iPad or do you use a laptop? What software do you use, if you use any? Do you use a hybrid perhaps, maybe a physical Bible and some electronic notes? Let me know in the comment section below. I'd love to hear how you do this as well. And if you're interested in doing your devotions in Greek, then download our free roadmap to mastery at bma.to/roadmap, and we'll explain to you what it takes to actually start to learn enough Greek to be able to do your devotions in the original languages, just like I do here as well. This is something that is doable for anybody, and I don't want you to feel that just because I do it that way, it's impossible. It's not. I was where you are, knew nothing. We can all do this. It's just a matter of time, effort, and diligence. So jump in and get your copy down below, bma.to/roadmap, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, keep taking small, consistent steps toward mastery, not only of your own soul, but also of the Greek of the New Testament. We'll see you there.